Welcome back to the Why Not Results podcast. Today I've got my business partner, Mario.
Howdy.
And then I've also got Justin Blake. Justin owns two different businesses. He owns Rising Phoenix SEO, as well as SMMI, which stands for Social Media Marketing International. He is an SEO expert and helps businesses get found. So specifically what we want to talk about today is when a business is actually ready for SEO. And when they can afford it, because it's a lot of work and it can cost money, and it's a long game as far as how long it takes to get things going. So Mario works with Justin and a few other agencies on our SEO. So I'm going to kind of pass the ball to you and let you ask Justin some of these questions, and I'll chime in where I feel appropriate.
All right. Sounds great. So Justin, thanks for being here.
No problem.
We're really happy to have these conversations. I am terribly intrigued with SEO to a fault. It's definitely been, I like that sticker.
Yeah.
This whole concept of SEO, search engine optimization, and being relevant and coming up in a Google search is where this whole Why Not Results concept started. Trying to make content specific to what you were telling me back in the day that you were, was what Google needed.
And old Starbucks.
And it's good old Starbucks, 6 years ago or so, 7 years ago, how long ago. So here we are now. I'm a little less confused, but I'm also even more confused because now I've actually kind of jumped off a little bit more in the deep end. And, it's great now that we're at the point that we're making better higher caliber content. Thanks to Jimmy and Oscar back there, and just the studio as a whole, what we've learned. But that really doesn't change the fact of how do we implement this content correctly, right? That thorn in the side of how do you technically put it together. I do not envy you for what you have to learn and how this needle is always evolving. So, where are you, first off, before we even get into the meat of it, how in the world are you keeping up with Google? Where does that even begin for a person like yourself?
Well, the truth is one person can't keep up. You need a team of people that are focused on their individual parts. So there's different campaigns that can be run. Each one has its own set of rules. Each one requires you to understand what's going on, and trying to keep up with all of that is just a full-time job all by itself.
Yeah.
Every time we have a conversation, I find myself asking more and more questions, which is problematic.
Yeah.
And I can tell you as a small business owner, the whole concept of what we're going to talk about today is like, when does a company want to get an SEO expert like yourself involved? That's a really loaded question, I would say, right? And how would you, off the cuff, how would you even begin to answer that? Let's just start there, and then we'll go down the rabbit hole.
There's a number of different ways to look at it. The first one being, if you go and hire somebody that is $200, $300, $400, how do you really get a return on that money? It's just the amount of work that is involved in doing it properly is not going to be covered by $200 or $300 in a month. And so to think that you're getting that these days is just a misnomer. It takes a unbelievable amount of time and work and hours that are dedicated to what it is that you're trying to accomplish.
Is it safe to say probably that every large scale company out there probably has an SEO expert involved?
Yes. It's
at least one.
Anymore, there's teams now that one team is working on this aspect, one team's working on that aspect. It just kind of depends what their goals are, ultimate goals are. And really the top level goal is just to drive traffic to their business of people that are searching for their product or service.
Well, speaking from firsthand experience, I really didn't understand why I couldn't just put up a website and that was enough, right? I didn't understand how this thing needs to look. It needed to technically be more sound, and there was a lot more to it than just it looking pretty, right? And so to have the art of making a website look good so the user experience is great, but then also have it function correctly, that has been such a big learning curve for me. And I don't get into the weeds like you do at all. But I think as a small business person, we don't even begin to understand, the abstract nature of what goes into the art of SEO and why it does take a couple $1,000s a month likely to really have it perform. especially for something that's competitive, right? Because that's a big thing, right? That's a big driving factor. And so I think the big isn't, we were kind of talking earlier about, we want kind of explaining, like, when should a company get involved? When should they consider SEO?
Yeah.
Right. And doesn't that probably start with just research and finding out how competitive your niche is?
A lot of people don't even know how to do the research for that. And so you almost need to hire somebody specifically for the research. And that can be kind of a daunting thing, because what are you getting? But the truth is, you want to be able to understand what your niche is, who are the dominant players in that niche, and what keywords are they trying to compete for. And then utilizing those keywords and applying them to your website to make that start to show up for those keywords. It can be quite a bit of work.
Well, and we've experienced firsthand, even looking at our own Why Not Results website, how many times that you've gone through and rewritten things, we've written on pages. And so I'm always caught up in the design side, and you're the copy guy, and it's been hard for Jimmy and I to answer your keyword questions.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And so keywords, let's just elaborate a little bit. Could you explain keywords really quickly?
Yeah, a keyword is effectively what somebody types in. It's like, for instance, podcast studio, Phoenix, for instance. How do you get the Why Not Results website to show up for that specific keyword? So if somebody is looking for a podcast in Phoenix, or a place to, work on the studio or do some of those other things, what is it that you need to do, not just on the website, but off of the website and all the other platforms that are out there? How can you boost up the website, or Why Not Results website?
And so the keywords are what people type in Google, right?
Correct.
Right? I mean, so whatever someone would type into Google to find your particular service offering or product, that's the keyword. And then you had another phrase. So if there's a phrase, what's that called? Was it the long tail?
Yeah. So there's different types of keywords, long tail, short tail, and then they're actually coded into different levels. There's an informative keyword. Somebody's doing research. There's a transactional keyword. Somebody's looking to buy, or some of those others. There's a whole bunch of different categories of keywords, and you want to try and get a mix of all those with the focus on the transactional keywords, because ultimately you want somebody to come to your website that is looking to buy your product or service.
Right. Yeah. And so if I remember it correctly, I mean, part of the art too that you try to do is focus on, try to dig out of the businesses is like, what are those sets of long tail keywords?
Correct.
Right. And transactional keywords.
Very, very difficult at times.
Well, and even relaying what we think might be a good keyword and what you have data that shows is a good keyword, again, is two different things. Like you said, it's difficult to kind of come up with those things, especially if you have a variety of different products or services that you offer, right? Then coming up with something that's actually, all right, what are we going to get the most bang for our buck on? Knowing that, hey, we don't have a dedicated employee that only focuses on SEO and focuses on this stuff. But what are we going to get the most bang for our buck on? Is it going to be, for our business, for example, is it going to be something like a video studio? Is it going to be for social media stuff? Is it going to be for podcasting? We just don't know.
Well, and trying to figure out what our potential client is going to be typing in to find us.
That's what I'm saying. Where we get the most bang for our buck. I mean, we just don't know.
Well,
and it's difficult as a business owner to come up with that.
So do you have tools or something that would assist?
Yes. So we have a bunch of research tools that we use. We also have to recognize that all ships rise with a rising tide. So what ends up happening is you get all these tire kickers that are coming through that, even though you're not optimizing for them, because everything else that you're applying or the power that you're applying to a website, you start to rank for these other keywords. And usually that's the first thing that you see that comes up, because they're usually a little bit easier to rank for than the actual transactional keywords, which is where the gold is.
Well, and it seems like the intimidating part about some of that stuff sometimes too is, all right, so if I have if we come up with some keywords that we know these convert pretty well, or these these are driving traffic, well, then do I need to rework my lead magnets at that point to say, all right, if traffic's coming in, for example, for podcast studio, then do I need to rework all my lead magnets to say, hey, is this, if they're coming in for this and not video studio or not, and not whatever else, right? Marketing consulting, if they're coming in for this one thing, then should my lead magnets be targeted just towards that?
Case studies, all of those will play a part. And then you start getting into some of the other aspects of SEO, which is the off page. You're trying to get all of these things in different places that people will find them and follow that breadcrumb trail back to your website. And again, you are trying to focus on the transactional, the people are looking to buy.
Well, and so again, I'm going to try to bring us back to what we're talking about here. So at what point in a business life cycle does someone engage in SEO, right? That's really the question. At what point is their business mature enough?
Yeah.
Right? That's, is what it comes down to. Because I know you spend a lot of times trying to find the ideal client, right?
Yes.
And there's been plenty of times where smaller businesses like ourselves, especially when I first met you, we just financially were not prepared for SEO, right? We needed to find something that was a little more financially stomachable, palatable, and even just manageable for that matter, something we could live with, because it takes a while to get going, correct? I mean,
yeah, one of the challenges that we always have is the length of time that you start to see a good return on your investment. Now, return on investment for SEO is huge, but you have to get there. And you have to keep grinding away to get there. And one of the things that you need to know is, do I have a budget for this? Because a reputable SEO is not going to be $500, $600, $700, $800. Many times on the easiest possible niche for a local client, I'm looking at $800 for my costs. Never mind the fact that, now we have, how much time do I have going into this?
Yeah.
All these other
hard
things.
costs. Yeah.
Right.
These are just hard costs that I end up having. And I'm, not one of those people that will take a contract for somebody and send it out to India, which you could do, but now you're looking at somebody using 3 years ago stuff, and
Dated information.
You're putting yourself in a position that you could get Google slapped. There's negative aspects of SEO also. So you're looking at time, and then you need to make sure that you understand what the budget is. And then a lot of times it's a term. For me, we have a 12-month term, and we try to focus on that and get you there. And what I always say, look, if we don't get you there by here, I'll work for free until we get there. But at least my costs for 12 months are taken care of. I can handle that, but I've never been concerned about after 12 months.
So you're saying that anybody who's going to really try to entertain this seriously should really look at this as at a minimum of 12 months.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're just seeing results in 4 to 6 months, maybe?
Usually 4 to 6 months, depending on the niche.
And what's considered a result, right? Getting on page 1, is that like the result?
Getting on page 1 is great. Really, you want to be 1, 2, or 3.
Okay. So this is right below the sponsored, when you do a search.
Right below the map section.
And
which is a secondary campaign that has to be run. So that's the Google My Business or Google Personal Business. I always get that wrong. They changed the name. And that is another different campaign that runs for the map section for any local businesses.
And I think a lot of people, myself included, it was very hard for me to understand the difference between the paid section, the sponsored up top, and the difference in getting up there opposed to the difference being ranked number 1, 2, 3, like you're saying, those top searches.
Right.
So anymore as a consumer, anytime I type in any search, I see the sponsored, I just don't even look at them. And I go down to the organic. I look to see who's ranking first, because those are the ones who told me they're really, from what I've learned from you, those are the companies who are really, they've spent time honing in their business, their craft. It's not a fly by night. It's not a quick deal. Because if you're looking for that quick shot, you're going to be at the top.
Yeah, and anyone can buy an ad.
Anybody can buy that. It's just you could outspin the next guy, right?
Less than 2% look at those things. It's all like you. It just becomes, I don't even look at them. The map section's where you want to be for a local business. And then the organic is the next level. And these numbers are changing with all of the changes that Google is making. But it used to be number one in the organic section, which is just underneath the maps, got 33% of the people, when they did that search, they'd click on that. So it was about a third. And, it's gone down a little bit more because Google makes money on the ads. And so they're playing games with all of the stuff on that search page to try and get you to click on their ad because that's where they get paid.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, yeah. And yeah, they're not making anything on SEO necessarily. It's interesting because prior to knowing you, right, my understanding of SEO kind of came down to you need to have, obviously you need your site up and everything, and then the more blogs you put out there with the right, with content that has keywords, the more you're going to rank. And you've gotten into and shown me and talked about things that I still don't understand as far as what's done on the back end, your to your site just to help it be seen. I think you call it on page initially and stuff like that. And it's not where the volume's obviously important and the number of the amount of content you get out there, but then there's also all this other kind of super techie stuff that nobody understands. Super techie, yeah.
It's crazy how techie it is, and I think that's what it gives you guys really a bad rap.
Yeah,
because people don't understand why they should pay you $3,000, $5,000 a month, and what's the value of that. So I mean, I guess if a business doesn't stand to, if it's not going to benefit them to get whatever 10 times their money, if they're putting $3,000 a month, well, what is that multiplier that they need to see? I guess is also dependent on the business. Right?
Yeah,
and now we have set up a spreadsheet. Here are the keywords. Here is the amount of traffic. Here is what that traffic is worth, depending on what what a client is worth every time somebody signs up. And then now we're able to actually look after 12 months, this is about where you should be. We just had one client we went through, and after 12 months, they were looking at an increase of over $1.3 million. It's just a matter of grinding and getting to that number.
I think a lot of people, myself included, we fail to start off on the proper foundation, and we really don't take that high level look, this game plan of, okay, what's needed, what is your what is your niche, what do you stand to make off of a client, and really look at, you go to the SBA and they always want you to go for a business loan. They typically want a business plan.
Yeah.
Right. And I'd say arguably the marketing plan and a component of that would be the SEO. There needs to be a separate dedicated SEO plan for a business owner to have an idea, right? To understand, okay, this is what you don't have. This is the opportunity you have access to. And here's your steps moving forward, first, second, third, fourth. Here's your budget. And if you're not prepared for this, right, don't even waste your time.
Yeah, it's truth. I mean, there's multiple conduits that you need to be looking at when you are looking at a marketing plan for a business. And that's why now a lot of larger or mid-sized companies have multiple teams that are doing different aspects of the marketing online. SEO is one aspect of that, and finding somebody that knows what they're doing is can be challenging because they're all they're all salespeople. It's all the game, but because it's SEO and nerd centric and very technical, people start talking there, and he goes, "Oh, he sounds like an expert." How much work goes into it? How many hours are spent? All of that stuff plays a part.
Well, how in the world are you supposed to determine a guy who's good and ethical and knowledgeable and one who's not? I mean,
right.
I mean, we know you, so we've got to know. We know your ethical side. We've tried our best to corrupt you, and it's in so many different levels. So we've seen you in action, not necessarily on the business side, try to corrupt you, but personally speaking,
right.
So we realize your scruples, where you stand.
You got to stand and do it right. And the truth is, finding people that are going to do this stuff correctly is difficult. I mean, like I said, a lot of people will take the contract and sell it to overseas. Not that there's anything wrong with overseas workers, but if you're just handing that whole contract over to somebody to do, now you have, a much more difficult time making sure that the quality is where it should be. We all have seen content that is written by an overseas writer that
Yeah.
that is not, English is not their first language. And that's no fault of theirs, but that's not the way that you want to be presenting your company with.
Well, and I think that's where a lot of SEO companies get kind of a bad rap too. To be honest, like I think I talked to Mario about this before I knew you. I said, he was asking me about SEO probably because of a conversation he had with you. But I said, all of these guys think that they're the only one that can do this stuff, and that they're the only, and they sign people up for these long contracts, and then it kind of falls flat. It's almost like it's, voodoo as far as what actually makes a site rank, but it's not. And I've learned that from you and everything. But it's because they're misrepresenting themselves. Some of these other SEO agencies, so for misrepresenting what they're doing and what can actually be provided.
Well, I mean, I think any business that's out there, you've got to, what I've learned, again, if anybody's quoting you less than like $2,000 a month, you better run.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a short-term situation. Maybe they can get you ranked because they're gaming the system one way or another. But to me, what I've always liked about SEO, and part of the reason I still go back to, I'm a long-termer, right? I'm not in this to try to make money right away. I mean, I'd love to, but I'm anything I get involved in, I'm looking at being in it 5-10 years. I mean, I'm looking long-term. So that's what I love about SEO, knowing that if I build the right foundation, put in the right key components, the right cogs, the machine's going to run and run, eventually run itself for a long time. And it's also, there's value there, which then you can sell.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I like that versus the paid side. I just am really turned off by the internet, the crack of the internet, being paid ads, paid Facebook, paid social. It turns me off. To me, the game of trying to outgame your competitor, I really like that from an organic standpoint, right? Back in the day, we'd spend so much money on a good sign and good location, right? And people would spend big whip on their storefront of their building. They'd spend big whip on their building. They still do. And still do.
To a certain degree.
But yeah, we don't want to spend $50,000 a year on making sure that our storefront is in front of everybody online. It's such a mental disconnect.
Well, and what so many businesses don't always take into account is the value that not just that provides to your sales, right? But if you're someone that ever wants to sell your company, right? The amount of organic traffic you're getting, the size of your database, the traffic you're getting on social, and all these different things, those are all factors in what your business will be worth afterwards as well.
We had a client out in Texas, and this has been a few years ago, that their website was producing leads, and they ended up selling that website for $2.4 million. So
just the website,
website,
not the business.
So that's like the whole business,
So if you tack on to also selling what the business is worth, now you're looking at an exit strategy of something that you can sell that produces leads, that is out there doing the work, and yes, you have some expenses for the SEO, but it's way less than the alternative.
Well, and the long-term value of not being reliant on leads, because the reality is that these things, and we've seen it happen before, whether it's Google or social ads or whatever, if your only strategy is ads, then you are 100%, your acquisition cost is 100% dependent on what these
your marketing budget.
And what these guys want to charge in your industry. A big name can come in and be in your industry all of a sudden, and they can outspend you. And so now everyone's cost in with those specific words is going to go up, or in that industry is going to go up. And you have to just sit and watch and know that like I said, your acquisition cost is going to go through the roof.
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. So Justin, if a big company came into a particular niche on the organic side, I assume it's still going to take them some time to outrank you too. If let's just say you are ranked 1 or 2, even if they were all of a sudden spending big whip, they came with a big budget, can they just in a short time frame take over your number 1 or 2 spot, or does it still take some time?
In that situation, money is not the only factor. It's also more important to have a very good understanding of the niche that you are operating in, And is your optimization that you're doing on a website and off of a website, is that enough to compete with this person that's spending more money? Just because they're spending more money on an SEO doesn't mean that SEO knows what they're doing as well. It's, it could be a number of factors there.
But if they have an unlimited budget for content creation, for blogs to be written, and for
that stuff like definitely does play a part.
That's gonna be hard, but it's still gonna take them more time than if they just want to come in and buy ads. They want to buy ads immediately. They're going to be able to outbid you on things,
right? And that's where that research comes in too, in terms of ads. If somebody's going to go after these main keywords, how do you get the same or a large share of that mitigates the amount of money that you now have to spend on those 4, 5, 6 keywords that they are targeting? You can go after other ones that are much cheaper and kind of work around or do an end around of what it is that they're trying to do.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to shit on ads either. I think both are necessary, but SEO is the long-term value, in my opinion, of the.
Well, getting back to the
brand.
budget. I think the small businesses don't go in with the right mindset on their budget spend, their ad spend.
Yeah,
right?
No question.
Because you need to go in with the two-pronged approach in the beginning, if I'm understanding correctly, because you still want to see some action up front to recoup more immediate dollars, which means you got to do your paid ads.
Yeah.
But simultaneously, while you're doing that, use that data and that research to what's actually turning over and seeing results that from the paid side. Then you want to incorporate a lot of those keywords, a lot of those attributes into your organic, right?
That's exactly right.
So you almost is it safe to say you almost need to plan on almost having like double the marketing budget up front just to get you going? Is that a realistic mindset? So if I'm saying I have $3,000 to throw at my website and SEO, I should probably throw in a couple $1,000 simultaneously at the paid ads if I really want to see this come to fruition. Well,
yeah.
Well, I mean, and what? Sorry,
no, you got it. It's exactly what it is that you want to do. There is that gap up front where the optimization that you're doing on a website and off a website are not going to produce traffic, and you need to fill that little hole in the beginning, however length that is, with a budget on paid ads. And then as your SEO traffic continues to increase, you can either decrease your paid budget or leave it where it's at and just reap the rewards of that traffic.
Awesome. Yeah, it seems like, to your point, how much can they spend, right? Well, how much should a business that's early on, in their first couple of years or so, let's say, how much should they be spending on marketing, right? Where's that line? And I imagine it's different with every business because business owner still has to live, right? And you still got employ people and stuff like that. But
I guess it depends on what kind of business you're trying to build.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Right. And how deep your pockets are going in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Are you gonna go bang on doors and do grassroots old school techniques of making cold calls and all of that, and just use your time? Or are you gonna, if that's all the budget you have, that's all the budget you have. That's what you have to do.
Right.
Right.
I know
bootstrap it,
a merchant that spent $150,000 on tenant improvements in their office. Zero money for optimization, marketing, anything. And they're out of business in 6 months because they have nobody coming through the door.
Right.
So if you don't break off money for your marketing, if you don't start looking at ways to get in front of people, you're setting your business up to fail.
Especially in today's world.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's too fast.
The world's gotten very small.
And optimization in itself there's a lot of people that look at it kind of sideways, but the truth is what you're trying to do is give Google what they're asking for. What is it that they're looking at? Who are you? So you just don't confuse Google. That's the biggest thing. When they show up at your website, there's a bunch of different things that they look at. And if you have this over here and that over there and all these different aspects that you do, Google gets confused and you're never going to get the rankings that you're looking for, and certainly not going to get the transactional people that are trying to search for your product.
Right. Right. Well, and to your point, the world's gotten small, and the other problem, I think, in a lot of this is that the world's, and business owners are definitely included in this, but has gotten very impatient and short-sighted in a lot of ways. And I think you see this with the attention span, and why a lot of short-form content is so popular is just the people have just gotten to a point where they don't always want to consume, or they don't want to invest in, hey, this is going to pay off in 2 years, right? They wanted, all right, let's just run some ads, or let's just
Good old instant gratification.
Yeah, yeah, and I get it. Look, I feel both ways as someone who's worked to try to build a business and still working to try to build it. But I think that's the point that people need to keep in mind, and business owners need to keep in mind, is just that hey, this is the long play. This is the long-term solution to not worrying about budgets every month and not worrying about these things, but knowing that, hey, I've invested for a long time, and here's what's paying off.
Right. Yeah, so getting back, I think it's not for everybody, right? They might not have the budget, they might not have the attention span, right? They might not even have this might not be the right fit if your product that you're trying to sell isn't a searchable product, right? If people aren't going out there searching for a solution that you're providing. Well, so I think,
oh, go ahead, sorry.
So I just think the point is, I think starting off with the plan is the first step to finding out if you really are a business that should be focusing on this or not.
It's true.
Right?
Our first month is spent getting access to properties and doing research. That's the first month. The first 4 weeks automatically.
Well, that's once I've said go, right?
Yeah.
You don't go into building a house without a plan, and in this case, you are building a digital house.
That's right.
Right.
I think the other consideration that maybe we're not bringing up too is whether they're a national business or a local business. Right?
Yeah, that's a big deal.
It's a lot less work to get ranked. I mean, it's still a lot of work. Don't get me wrong. But for a local business, a plumber, to get ranked in some places than it is to get ranked across the nation for plumbing, right? If we can include those cities in there, and things like that to get them action, whereas running things nationally or even worldwide, I mean, that's a whole other ballgame, in which case maybe starting to run ads is a little further, or I'm sorry, doing SEO, they're going to be running ads for a little bit longer to get the traction that they need. And SEO is just going to take, because it's going to take that much longer to be ranked everywhere.
Yeah, you're looking at some much bigger budgets when you're looking nationally.
Yeah,
I mean, we've had quotes out $15,000 to $25,000 a month, and that is not above where a lot of these companies are for a national campaign.
Right.
It's nuts, and I look at those numbers and I'm amazed. But the truth is, when you start thinking about it, just the top 20 cities is a big undertaking. Phoenix itself is very difficult to rank in. It's a lot of techie people here. There's a lot of SEO companies that are here that you are competing with in the local market, and it's one of those things that you better come correct and come hard.
Yeah.
I love it and I hate it all in one, man. But we're not giving up on it. I like it. We're doing more and more things with the website to try to focus on the SEO side. In addition to the social, all the different components, it all works together in tandem, right? You can't do one without the other. And then to your point of what happens, where are they going after they found you, right? What landing page are you sending them to? What lead magnet, right? Yeah. And so all of it comes to, you need all of it. It's the whole kit and caboodle is important. So Justin, really appreciate your time and coming on, and looking forward to having some more conversations.
This was fun.
Yeah. We're about 30 minutes in, and I don't know how much people can stomach on listening to SEO. I mean, I'm about to pee my pants. I'm so excited, but I don't think Jimmy is. I don't know, maybe. But anyway, thanks for coming on, brother. I don't know if there's anything you want to share, one last thought, or.
No, I mean, it's one of those things that has to be done, and to be in a situation where you are putting yourself in a multiple channel opportunity, that's what you need to do.
And people can get a free consultation from you by going to risingphoenixseo.com, correct? And yeah, so if you do want a consultation, it's an honest guy. I at least know that. I'll endorse you there.
I will endorse Justin Blake 100%.
And
he'll tell you the truth. You might not want to hear what he says, but he'll tell you the truth.
So on that, let's go ahead and sign off.
All right.